We are back with you. Another new edition of Celtics Beat. I was going to say another nice new edition, but I don't know how kind this show is going to be, if I'm being honest. It's been a weird sort of run. I'm Adam Kaufman. You know, Evan Valenti, our producer, sometimes host. Of course, we welcome in a good friend of the program, Sean Deveney from Heavy, from Forbes, from, everywhere. The man just, he runs the globe. How are you, bud?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
I've been better. I've been better, Sean. You know, I was just looking at the Celtics schedule, and as we know, and we can dive into this stuff a little bit later, the 7 games left and sitting 7th in the East and what that means for the play-in tournament and other thoughts on the play-in tournament around the league and all that good stuff. We'll save that. We'll get to it a little bit later in the show. The last handful of games, guys, I think is just such a perfect microcosm of this Celtics season in so many ways. Okay, you look at the game last Sunday, so a week ago Sunday in Charlotte, just embarrassed, doors blown off. Terry Rozier is torching you. There's no Gordon Hayward. You don't even show up for that game, and everyone's making excuses after the fact, saying, you know, we got to be better and all that good, all that stuff we're used to hearing. It's a north of 20-point loss. How do they rebound? How are they gonna stick their feet to the fire and respond? Well, they get embarrassed even worse by Oklahoma City at home. Not worse in the sense that, you know, they lost by more. They only lost by 4, but worse because that is a team that had lost 14 straight games. You're in your building. They had played a back-to-back. You're well rested, and they have no talent whatsoever to speak of. You're basically full, you know, for the most part, at least in terms of what you need to have out there, artillery rise. You've got the power, and you go out there and you lose. I mean, good for the Leominster native, the head coach there for the homecoming in front of friends and family, but God damn it, what an awful performance by the Celtics in that game. So fine, what are they going to do next time out against Charlotte? They win, they recoup, they put their, money where their mouth is. Jaylen Brown, he's a leader, he shows up. It's all, I'm getting killed on Twitter. Great, wonderful. That's what you need. Charlotte kind of but they all count the same. That's all that matters. So then you have the game against the Spurs, which in and of itself is kind of the Celtics season, right? They go down by 32 points, and then complete one of the biggest comebacks in NBA history behind Jayson Tatum's historic 60-point performance. Mike Gorman called it one of the top 5 games he'd ever seen in his time with the Celtics, and the guy's been around for a little while. And an unbelievable performance by the team win of the year, Jayson Tatum, unbelievable. And they come back last night, they lose against Portland. They fall by 10. Kemba Walker still sidelined. 4th straight game missed. And then the final minute of what was obviously a very winnable game, a very entertaining game for the most part, till obviously the refs got involved there late and it kind of skewed everything. But they're just in this injury-plagued season. You see Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown so fittingly, poetically colliding, and both leaving with injuries. Now, it's entirely possible neither one is serious. Tatum spoke post-game. He said he's okay. We don't have a concrete update right now on Brown. Maybe both will be out there for this next game. But good Lord, what we've seen from this sample of late to take us just perfectly into where we are in this season, Sean.
Yeah, what a week, man! That does sort of sum up the season, especially the injury thing. And if you say this, then people, oh, you're making excuses for them. You're doing this, you're doing that. But I have never seen a team that is a good team and a contending team. You see this happen to terrible teams, and they become, they go and get the 1st or 2nd pick in the draft the following year. From a contending team, from a team that is among the top, let's say 10 teams in the league, I've never seen this kind of year. They've had 32 starting lineups in 65 games. 32 starting lineups for 65 games. They haven't used the same starting 5 more than 4 games in a row. It's pretty incredible. The most common starting 5 they've used was for 10 games, and that was one of the Tice lineups early on in the season. So look, injuries aren't an excuse, but they are a reason for a lack of chemistry, a lack of understanding how to play with each other, a lack of understanding, okay, what's going to happen when we get in tough situations, when we're in adversity, knowing what to do, knowing what to expect from this guy, that guy. When you haven't played together, then you don't have that sort of that comfort level. And I think what we see over and over and over again with this team, and people get frustrated and say, well, they're not trying. I don't think that's it. They don't have the chemistry. They don't have the knowledge of each other. So they get in these tough situations and they take bad shots. They jack up threes that they shouldn't be jacking up. They take contested mid-range shots because they get themselves in a situation where the ball's not moving. They don't know what to do, and they wind up with the bad shot. You know, people don't realize how quick those 24 seconds go when you're out on the floor and when when you're under pressure like that. And I think if you just haven't been in those situations with the guys around you, then you're going to get some of the ugly decision making that we see from the Celtics all too often. And as well as they played yesterday, it was a good, they lost by 10, but it was a really well played game, really on both sides of the ball. But you did see some of the bad decision making, Marcus Smart and others making some bad decisions late in that game. I think a lot of that is just this team has not played with each other.
Yeah, you look at what Fournier said after the game last night, right? He talks about how he doesn't feel like he's 100% back. He feels, first off, the fact that he feels bad about getting COVID and putting this team in the situation. Yeah. I mean, look, this particular virus, we're a year in and we still don't understand everything about it. You get it. It's unfortunate, but you don't need to apologize to the team for missing time. It just means a lot that he's, trying to come back and trying to get better while this team tries to figure itself out and get himself playoff ready after coming back from this thing. Is tough. He talked about it feels like he has a concussion. His depth perception is all off. Although last night he looked terrific. Shot the ball very well last night. But it's just, you look at that. You look at Jayson Tatum has taken an inhaler before games to get his lungs right. You have Kemba Walker getting managed for a knee injury for the entire season, then strained his oblique. What was a very weird play. It's a disaster. And it's like, Rob Williams is managing some sort of, nagging injury. Jaylen Brown's nursing 2 nagging injuries. And they add the one last night for the cause. Look, we've tried all season and we've had a myriad of guests. Sean's been on a bunch, trying to figure out what is wrong. Is it coaching? Is it the personnel? Is it players? It's maybe, can we admit that this whole season that's been, and you look at the injury numbers and how many games have been lost to injury, the Celtics are running away with that particular statistic. Dallas in second has also been decimated by injuries and COVID throughout the entire season. I don't like to make excuses for injuries, but I think in this particular season, we have to maybe consider that it's playing a little bit more of a bigger factor than any of us maybe want to admit. Because none of us want it. It's like using the refs as an excuse. Yeah, the refs blew a couple of bad calls last night, including Tristan Thompson's goaltend, which was an absolute disaster and a joke in real time. And the fact that they didn't let Brad review that after whatever. It's just maybe we're not playing into that particular storyline because it's lame. But maybe that's really what's going on here, as Sean alluded to. The chemistry's off, and that might be a big reason why. You have guys trying to fill roles they're not normally used to filling. I mean, Jayson Tatum scoring 60 the other night, which was unbelievable. Do we also want to talk about the fact that it was necessary for him to take 38 shots in a game? Yep. Because it just, the way their offense looked at times, just give the ball to Tatum and just get out of the way. And that might be the best offense. So, I don't like making the injury excuse for any team, regardless, unless it's like 2008 and Brady goes down in week 1 where he tears his ACL. And the season's over after that. I don't like to make excuses in basketball, but this might be the year to use that because this is ridiculous. How many different starting lineups? 32? Did 32. You say, Sean? That is ridiculous. And it's a truncated season. It's a smaller season, and they've had 32 starting lineups. It's frustrating, but at the same time, it's like it is what it is, and Boston's had to make the best of it. It just hasn't gone their way at all really this year.
Yeah. I wonder if it gets to the point too where everything that you've both highlighted, and I don't think enough attention, quite frankly, can be spent on the Fournier stuff. Listening to him post game, it sounded scary. Out there, it's certainly frightening for anyone that either has had COVID or still lives in fear of getting COVID. The idea of being out there, being a professional athlete, playing a basketball game at obviously the highest level, and feeling like you are actively playing with a concussion is just. The blurriness, the vision, the lack of focus, the depth perception, all the different things, Evan, that you mentioned. It's it makes me wonder if you get to a certain point where the lack of continuity and everything that Sean explained that we've talked about, I don't know how many times on the show over the course of the season, and Brad has talked about it, the players have talked about it. If you just kind of accept as we near the end of the regular season, and some people in my Twitter mentions asking on a daily basis, is this even a playoff team, let alone one that's going to, come out of the play-in tournament or escape the play-in tournament or whatever it may be. If we spent time with Abby Chin last show talking about ultimate expectations for this team, and saying that it just runs the gamut, and you could paint any scenario and none at this point in time would really be all that surprising. Do we just have to sit back, and this is not how sports fans are built, or not how we're wired? Do we just need to sit back and say whatever happens, man? Because it's just impossible to even feel one way or another about this team, and it's hard to even get angry at this team anymore. I had so much anger toward this team throughout much of the season, but now as we get to this point and everything that has unfolded, you just kind of have to say, all right, sometimes it's just not your year, man. I don't know what you're supposed to do about it.
I agree with that, and some of this does go back to the NBA itself, the way that they've approached this season, and the fact that we're playing this season the way we are, and whether that was a good idea to begin with, to come back before Christmas and get started then, when there weren't vaccines and there were, the whole COVID thing. If we were starting this season, say in February, it's a different sort of thing, not just in terms of training camp and that, but now, you've got vaccines, you've got, a much better understanding of what's going on, and you're going to have less of this wild card of COVID, which, I think the Celtics are up to something like 160 games that have been affected by COVID, whereas Indiana, I believe, has 2. So, and that's just a wild card, so you have one high end, one low. You can't control that. And some of that's on the league for starting this thing, and the players agreed to it. I'm not saying it's all just the league; it's players too. The players could have fought them a little harder on that, but they didn't. Because they all wanted the financial benefits of starting early. So, some of this is the way this season was set up. It's not limited to the Celtics. I think the Celtics have been hit harder by it than anybody else in the league, but it's really not limited to that. I mean, you look at Miami and the situation they've been in, obviously a very disappointing year, but, a lot of that's been because of COVID. Dallas has been in a similar sort of situation. And teams that have, Utah has had practically a clean bill of health all year, and that's one reason why they're the best team in the league. So, health is always going to be a factor, but it just seems like because of the way the NBA set things up this year, it was always going to be a much, much bigger factor this time around than any other time around.
So as things sit right now, you have the Celtics 7th in the Eastern Conference. And again, for anyone that is unfamiliar with the play-in tournament, the way this works is first 6 teams in each conference guaranteed a spot in the postseason. Then this 7 to 10, you're going to have those teams square off, and obviously 2 will emerge for the 7 and 8 seeds, and 2 will find themselves in the lottery. So the C's right now would be part of the play-in tournament, but it's so close. It is so close right now. The 4 through 8 seeds through Sunday. Of course, as we talk here Monday morning, you have the Knicks, who, granted, they're playing above their heads, credit to them. You have the Hawks, a game and a half behind them in 5th and 6th. The Heat, another half game back. Then the Celtics in 7th, just a half game out of 6th, 2.5 out of 4th. In the Hornets, who are a couple games beyond the Celtics, are sitting in 8th. So C's, you'd love to see them avoiding a first round matchup with Milwaukee, obviously, if that's possible. Getting up to that 4 or 5 seed. But I mean, man, as of right now, what is it? Washington, I think that maybe would be their matchup. I'd have to pull it up and look at it. It doesn't really matter. I believe that's what it is. Yeah, they'd play Washington right now if the season ended. So as we know, there's a lot that happens before then. But even still,
I think they play Charlotte, Adam, when they because it goes 7-8 and then the 9-10 play each other.
Is that what it's dropped to now?
Yeah. So it's 7. So that would intriguing, one game playoff there,
Right.
in Boston and Charlotte, no doubt. So Boston would play Charlotte, and then the winner of that automatically gets 7, and then the loser would play either Indy or Washington.
So it's just, a part of it, obviously, to that point, a little bit confusing for some that haven't paid, daily attention to it, as so many have out there stressing over the play-in tournament. I personally, I've never been a fan of the play-in tournament. I've said that in this show. So this is not me being LeBron or Mark Cuban or whoever else, saying as soon as your team is afflicted by it, all of a sudden we hate the play-in tournament. We can get to that. But as it relates to the Celtics, I mean, what is the most, never mind like best case scenario, we know what that is, but how do you think this unfolds? Do you feel like this is just an inevitability into the play-in tournament right now?
No, I think they'll pull themselves up, at least to number 6. I do. The rest of their schedule is very, some of this is going to depend on Jaylen Brown,
Sure.
And how his ankle is, and whether they decide, we'd be better off going in the play-in tournament and giving Brown, 8 to 10 days off. If they do that, they wind up in the play-in tournament. Maybe he's healthy, and that's just how it goes. So some of that's going to depend on that, but I think the rest of the schedule is easy enough that they should be. They've got 2 games against Miami; those are going to be obviously really, really important. And you look at the rest of it, they have very winnable games across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that they'd be able to do enough to pull themselves out of that. So, like you said, it's such a slim margin that you got to think that one of those other teams with a tougher schedule. Obviously, the Knicks have a really tough schedule remaining, going on the road and all that. I think the Celtics should be able to do just enough to pull themselves out of that 7 spot and avoid that play-in.
Yeah, I almost think you could rest everybody, though, at this point, just because, I've come to the conclusion that, and it was kind of evident a while ago, and I forget what game I said it, but it was like, if this team doesn't have everybody together, the chemistry and the body language and the effort just looks off. But when everybody's together, they have great energy. When they're not, it just seems weird. So, as we get closer to playoffs, my point was, if they're not going to play, to the energy level they need to play with, and without who cares? It's just one of those things. If they're if everybody's healthy and they're, if they have their full complement of their roster, then they're a good shot to beat anybody. And I'm not even trying to be a homer about this. They have a lot of great talent on that team, and they play well together when everybody's on the floor. But the problem is nobody's ever healthy enough to see what it looks like for 4 games in a row. So why don't you just bank that? Because especially if you're gonna rest Jaylen Brown a lot, the guy that I feel bad for is Jayson Tatum, who's dealing with COVID, trying to get over that, has played a ton of minutes this year, a ton of high leverage minutes this year, and needs a break and can't even get one because he's got to carry the offensive load because both Kemba and Jaylen Brown are going to be injured at this point. So, as much as we want to try and get them to get to a higher seed because it feels like more gratifying if they're the 4th seed instead of being the 7th. Again, at this point, I'm so reserved to say whatever. If this team is healthy come playoff time, they're one team. If they're not, they have 0 shots. So we might as well just get everybody healthy, play that game, and get to the playoffs with hopefully trying to have your full roster.
Yeah, and to your point, Evan, imagine being Philadelphia and the Celtics do wind up number 7 and they get to win the play-in game and they come in healthy, and you're the Sixers and you've had this great year, and you look and you're like, oh, great. We get the Celtics again. Great. I would not want to be Philadelphia playing the Celtics in the first round of the playoffs, not after the year that Philadelphia's had and the way that the Celtics have played them in the postseason in the past.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if you're going to play Embiid and you're going to play Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris, and again, Doc's done a great job with that team all season long. You're not going to beat that team. Look, Embiid's going to score 40 a game anyway. Doesn't matter what you do, but you're going to need some firepower on the other side. And if you have a fully rested Kemba Walker, if you have a fully rested Jaylen Brown, and you've been able to find ways to give Tatum nights off, then you can at least go toe to toe with them with firepower and say, hey, out of all the teams that are left here, we feel the most comfortable playing you guys because we've had so much, successes against you guys in the past. I mean, I would be okay with it. And if they went down to the league MVP or a guy that would have won it if he didn't get hurt, I'm okay with that. I'm totally fine with that, considering how the season's gone. But again, I'm with you, Sean. If I'm Philadelphia, and for some reason, the it would be so funny for Philly if the only time the Celtics were healthy at all over the entire 2020-2021 season was the playoffs against them. That would just be hysterical from my point of view. That's all.
Celtics in 5.
It'd be so perfect for this season, though, wouldn't it? It would just make all the sense in the world the way this thing has gone. You know, finally they've got their guys just in time for the postseason. So, told some people on Twitter you were going to be on the show here, Sean, and someone asked, and maybe you saw this question, you probably weren't surprised to see it, from Footnotes, a loyal listener of the program. Sean claimed last season the Celtics were better off without Gordon Hayward. Does he care to amend? And I feel like I know how you're going to answer this question, and I don't even necessarily disagree with it, but I want to hear it.
No, I don't care to amend. I do believe that they were always going to need someone else. I just didn't think that guy was Gordon Hayward. That if you were able to pull off a sign and trade for him, then that would have been ideal. My point with him was always that he duplicated too much what Tatum and Brown do. That there's not enough differentiation there. That he was never going to be happy as a fourth option, and that you needed somebody who fit the roles that have been established within this team. I still believe that. Look, with the way things have gone because of the injuries and because of all the absences, Gordon Hayward, it would have been great to have him. But when you look at the team and the way that this team is structured, I still think he doesn't really fit. That he is a guy who, you're struggling to take another sort of wing combo forward guy and put him on the floor. And that's for the roles on this team. I just don't think he was ever really the ideal guy. And when they brought him in, they didn't know what they had with Brown and Tatum. They just didn't know. And so bringing him in made sense. But I think letting him go made sense too. You would have liked to have gotten a little bit more for him, obviously, than the trade exception and turning that into Evan Fournier.
So I certainly wish they still had a healthy Gordon Hayward, and it's important to phrase it that way because he's hurt for Charlotte right now. I mean, the guy, unfortunately, he just can't stay on the floor. We've had the Hayward discussion so many times. We don't need to have it again here. I didn't expect you to amend, obviously. What I did think you were going to bring up is that, Evan Fournier, if he were the guy that they traded for anyway, and it's not his fault, he got COVID and everything that's come along since, the inconsistency and all else. So obviously we hope that, he is able to get right for the team's sake, mostly for his sake, for, all the different reasons. But if he were the guy that they dealt for, that they got from Orlando, he would have come in and kind of been Hayward light in some of the best ways, I imagine, in your eyes, compared to some of the ways that took away from Tatum and Brown. Obviously he would have come in and certainly known his role as more of a supportive piece than a focal piece. And it would impact what we've seen from this team over the course of the last month and a half, but he just hasn't been able to be that guy.
Yeah. I mean, if we were to shoot the way that he's shot in his best games, when we've seen him at his best, right before he went out, certainly last night, what was he, 6 for 8 last night? I mean,
8 for 10.
You'd take that, sure. Yeah, 8 for 10,
yeah.
Right. So I think anybody who shoots 80%, you'd welcome that on your team. But no, yeah. I mean, but you're right. And you probably, if things had gone right and you're able to maybe get 2 players, because there's still money left on that trade exception. If you're able to get 2 players out of that deal, another role player, whether it's a big guy or whatever it may be, then I would still say that they're better off. And Evan Fournier is a much better role player for what this team is than what Gordon Hayward was ever going to be. He was never going to be happy as the fourth option. And he said that. And that's again, they didn't know he was going to be the fourth option when they signed him. And I don't think there's any hard feelings for him, wanting to go and take on a bigger role.
In the spirit of guys emerging, though, and even it's all the more impressive, quite frankly, in the wake of COVID and the inhaler and everything that Evan talked about before with Jayson Tatum, what he is doing right now, and the 60-point game, not even, like being the fixture. Obviously, that was an unbelievable game.
Should have been
But
61. That was an and one.
yeah, so there you go. He
Nonsense.
got robbed. I like him holding up
Yeah,
the
that's-
sheet a la Wilt.
That's a big thing, though, of the all-time leader in a game for the Boston Celtics.
That's true.
Huge accomplishment.
No, it's
Yeah.
it's a big deal, and I'm not, certainly dismissing any of it. It's been unbelievable to watch, but even more so, that what makes it all the more impressive is that it's not just this isolated, boy, what a great game from Jayson Tatum, and then whatever, he gives you 20 the next night or something like that. He's on this 3-game run right now where he's matched or even exceeded Larry Bird in total points in the 3-game stretch for the most in Celtics history. He has 4 straight 20-point halves. He's just on this otherworldly run right now. A lot of it, as Evan said before, has been out of necessity, obviously, with the team shorthanded, but hey, that's just been the case all year. But are you seeing anything right now, Sean or Evan as well, that you feel like you haven't seen from Tatum before, even during that stretch last year pre-bubble where he was playing out of his mind?
I think that so I think there's kind of a one thing, but in 2 facets. One is that I think his decision making is getting much sharper and getting sharper all the time. So I think there's that, and that is just part of maturing and having been a young guy and learning, making the mistakes and learning from it. But I think the other thing is that his mistakes now are such that he seems to put himself in a position where even his mistakes, even when he gets into a bad shot, he's still in a position to make a shot. He's still, his bad decisions aren't as bad as they used to be. I guess that's a good way to put it. So, even when he puts himself or he's forced into that position, because like you say, nobody else is making shots, he seems better able to handle that. And that's physical maturation. So I think there's the mental aspect where I think his decision making is sharper. I also think physically he has developed in such a way that he knows how to get himself just enough room, even when he has to take a shot that he probably shouldn't be taking.
One of the big things I like recently, and I agree with the decision making is a big thing. His ability to attack immediately instead of wait and survey what the guy's doing. It's like, no, you attack and you let him adjust. You don't adjust to him. One of the things I want to bring up, which has been huge, if you go back to 4-9, this is the run that he's been on. There's one exception of a very weird game against the Lakers in which just a weird game on the road. I think we all watched that and it was just bizarre how the Celtics bench almost gave up a 27-point lead at one point in that game. But going back to that game against Minnesota, free throw attempts, 16, 8, 10, 0 against the Lakers. Then 8, 8, 8, 7, 7, 8, 17.
Music to my ears.
That's what you want. That's the stuff I'm looking for. I'm looking for a guy that gets to the free throw line because he's such a good free throw shooter. Gets him in rhythm as a shooter. Like one of the things that people, I think, don't take a lot of. I just don't think about a lot because I hear people like, oh, that sidestep 3 that Tatum takes off the dribble is a great shot. And I'm like, yeah, because he makes it a lot. But you also have to understand time and circumstance. If Tatum's 0 for 5 and takes that shot to go 0 for 6 or 1 for 6, that's a bad shot in my opinion because he needs to get rhythm. And a lot of times guys get rhythm by going to the free throw line and knocking down 3 or 4 in a row. Then all of us, and these guys are unworldly shooters, especially today. Like the shooting now is outrageous. I mean, Tatum's shot, again, the step back 30-footer that he takes and makes with regularity, it's an insane shot that 20 years ago, people weren't taking multiple times a game on purpose. So it's like one of these things where if Tatum gets to the free throw line and establishes that rhythm early on in the game, it allows him to be a much better shooter. So when he's, taking those contested 3-pointers, they go in a lot more when he's in rhythm than when he's not. And if he's not in rhythm and he takes that shot and he misses it, that's a bad shot because all he has to do is find a way to the free throw line. They're easy points, just no defense, no time off the clock. And Tatum's an efficient shooter. So that's the number that gets me the most excited, guys.
So I want to make sure, especially in the interest of time, so we've got you about 10 more minutes or so, and I do want to get to the LeBron and Cuban comments and all that stuff as well. But Evan knows at least once a show I'm going to say something stupid. Well, here's today's. Okay, so over this last 3-game run, we've seen, as we just talked about, Jayson Tatum play absolutely out of his mind, but these have still been close games. You know, they didn't even win the Portland one, as we know. The other, you know, they needed the overtime victory to come back from down 32 in the 60-point effort for Tatum, and obviously the Charlotte game as well. So Tatum has been great. And that's where it's at. It's, you know, what else? And, well, the and here is an acronym, folks. It's Aaron Nesmith dominance. That's what it is. Aaron Nesmith dominance, Sean, because you can't win these games right now, or even be close in these games right now without Aaron Nesmith. That is not even overstating it. That is just a reality. The rookie has gotten comfortable. He's gotten an opportunity. He's made shots, and the way that he has shot, you look at, you know, his game log over these last few. You know, he's got that 15-point game against Charlotte. It's oh my God, we've never seen anything like this from Aaron Nesmith so far in his rookie year. You know, early on it was Peyton Pritchard. When's Nesmith going to contribute? You know, he's always been heart, hustle, energy, all that. But when's he actually going to put the ball, you know, in the cylinder? Well, 15 and then 16 each of the last 2 games. So he is on a good, consistent run right now. And, you know, the field goals, 6 out of 7, 7 out of 9, 6 out of 12. He's hitting, you know, almost all of his 3-pointers. He's a total of, let's see, 8 for 12 from 3. He's not getting to the free throw line. He's rebounding the ball, by the way. In these 3 games, he has a total of 19 rebounds. And this is all while he's getting himself into horrible foul trouble. He's coming within 1 foul of fouling out in all 3 of these games. So, which again speaks in part, I mean, he's a little erratic, but it speaks in part, again, to just the energy, the mindset, what he needs to bring. I think there's a reason, and I'm paraphrasing the tweet that Marcus Smart tweeted out the other day saying, yeah, I mean, Tatum's playing out of his mind, and this is awesome. But, like, let's celebrate Aaron Nesmith and what he's doing right now, because he is just such a big part of what is leading to any sort of victories that we're getting here during this stretch. I don't think we could say enough about what he's doing lately.
Yeah, and it's rare. I mean, you see this kind of thing from a rookie on a team that's out of contention, that's not playing for, you know, that they get a chance late in the year and garbage games and they put up numbers. This guy is putting up numbers in important situations for a team that he hasn't done much for all year. You know, that like you said, he's had some flashes here and there, but certainly has not been as good a shooter as we've seen lately, and as good a shooter as he's supposed to be coming out of college. That was the big, the big benefit of him. Orlando really wanted him. The pick after the Celtics took him, I think Celtics 14, so Orlando was 15.
Yeah, 14.
He wasn't going to get past Orlando at 15. Celtics grabbed him at 14, and then for the first 75% of the seasons, we've said, what's with this guy? But now you kind of see why teams really liked him on both ends of the floor. Pretty good defensive player too, just his ability to knock down shots. That is something that I've been waiting for. I know most Celtics fans have been waiting for all year. And again, you just don't really see this kind of sudden production on a good team from a rookie late in the year. It really does add a new wrinkle when the playoffs do start. And teams, if you're going to play the Celtics early on in the playoffs and you haven't had a chance, or you will have had a chance to scout most of their guys, you're not going to have much on Aaron Nesmith, and he could be a little bit of a wild card in that postseason.
Who would have thought he'd be part of the rotation too?
Right.
Well, yeah, but I said at the beginning of the year when he wasn't playing that much, it's only because defensively he was a disaster. It comes with practice, playing time, and playing with your teammates, communication, chemistry, all that stuff. And at the time, I said, look, if he can't shoot, then he's not going to play because he has no idea what he's doing defensively right now. And we know how much Brad values defense. And if he's not going to hit shots, then he's a complete negative out there. What you're seeing now is he has played enough to get comfortable on the floor, shooting the basketball. And now that he's shooting the basketball better, it gives you an opportunity to play him a little bit more. And as he gets more comfortable with his teammates, he's going to get better defensively. He's a good athlete. He's got length. He's got size. So it's not like he's going to be a total stiff out there defensively. He has the tools to be a good defender. it just takes time to get up. You know, again, this is a guy who played half a season in college and had no training camp. It just essentially walked on the NBA. The speed of the game is way different. So, you know, he got a lot of flack for getting picked at 14, especially with Saddiq Bey going a little bit later, and who has been tremendous for Detroit. And I love Saddiq. But Danny saw a guy that could really hit shots and maybe has some potential that we haven't seen yet. And what you're seeing now is a guy that feels a little more confident on the floor. He kind of feels where the ball needs to go. One thing I like about Nesmith is he knows his role. My role is I need to hit open shots. I need to hit open threes. I need to be in this spot just in case, you know, Tatum or Brown get cut off or Smart gets cut off from making a drive. I need to be here. I need to fill this gap, and then I need to hit this shot. That's how he survives. And what you're also getting is the energy plays that he provides you just on the glass. You know, offensive and defensive rebounding from have been big. I mean, he had a putback the other night that was, you know, he came out of nowhere to grab it, put it back, or like that's a great smart heady play by a rookie who's trying to figure it out still. So again, if they get anything from him, especially this part of the year and into the postseason, that's a win considering what they've gotten out of him so far. The Pritchard pick was a huge win. I love the way he plays. He's a perfect, like scrappy, you know, third guard that they have. He's going to play big minutes, not just this year, but in years to come. But the Nesmith reemergence or emergences in general has been awesome. And because he's hitting shots, he's staying on the floor. And if he can continue to do that, this team can continue to grow around him a little bit. And they can insert him in different lineups and things. But it's been encouraging the past couple of games.
Just looking ahead at some of what's to come here. So before we do get out of here, and I guess I could have sprinkled it in with the play-in tournament conversation before, but Sean, what do you make of sort of the league-wide perception of the play-in tournament? You have Mark Cuban, some of the Mavs being, you know, very vocal about not liking it. LeBron saying whoever came up with, you know, this belief should be fired. But where, you know, as and others have tweeted this, and this was the first thing I tweeted when I saw the comments from LeBron last night, you know, these comments just don't hold water with the timing. If you had said that at the beginning of the season, sure, you know, you've made your opinion known. When you don't think it's going to affect you, and then it does, and then you say it, you know, then you just look soft, quite frankly, you know, afraid of a one-game play-in to get into the tournament here. Now, I don't like the play-in tournament either. I think it's actually great for the league. I think it's great to, you know, keep more and more fan bases invested and interested in their team's success ultimately than has done in the past. You know, you don't have any of those teams that the whole idea is preventing or limiting tanking. Well, you're seeing a lot more of that, obviously. More of these teams, most teams right now are within striking distance of the play-in tournament, and seems like a lot want to be there. Now, maybe that is unique to this year, but it feels like the play-in tournament is around to stay. How do you feel about it? Just, you know, I don't know, surface level and what we should expect going forward.
Yeah, you know, I actually like it. You know, I think that as we've seen in the past, you know, you're going to get some teams that, you know, geez, you remember maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago in the Western Conference, you'd have teams that won 47 games and didn't have a crack at the playoffs. You know, you're going to get things like that. And yeah, I have no problem with expanding it a little bit, giving more teams an opportunity, and going from there. You know, it's not a huge, you know, it's a few games. It's you know, 2, maybe 3 games, 4 at the most, and you know, that's it. So it's not something that is, you know, very intrusive, but it does add a little bit of an element, a little bit of a wrinkle. It reminds me of, you know, the wild card. When baseball brought in the wild card, the purists their heads were exploding, and you know, this is the end of the world as we know it. And then people saw the wild card and saw some of that and said, well, this isn't so bad. And of course, you know, you'd never think of taking it away now. And I, you know, I kind of think it's going to be that way in the NBA, that within a few years, it'll just kind of be how things are. But you're right about some of the hypocrisy here that, you know, LeBron 1 year ago was saying, you know, they should have something where the 6th seed plays the 10th seed, you know, all these teams that are so close. And now that he's got one of the teams that is involved in of course, Mark Cuban voted for it as a member of the board of governors. This thing passed unanimously. So he voted for it. Yeah, so it is funny how the tune changes when it affects you when you're not expecting it to. But at the same time, I still think it's anytime you get more teams involved and you can have a way like this to keep the tanking at a minimum, I think it's a good thing.
Real quick on this, just before we get out of here, because I know we're trying to get out of here at this point, but I agree with what Sean said. I'm all about this stuff. I love the wild card in baseball. 04 Red Sox, obviously, are a team that's near and dear to my heart, wild card team. But I love this. And think about it this way from a team planning standpoint. And I know they didn't win. They didn't make it. But think about the Phoenix Suns last year, right? They go 8-0 in the bubble. They just missed the cutoff, right? Do they make the Chris Paul move if they don't go 8-0 and see that this teammate might have something? So they were a joke. They went 8-0 in the bubble. They got real close to getting into the playoffs. They didn't quite make it, but you knew something might be there. And then all of a sudden, Phoenix, the offseason, they go get Chris Paul. They bring him in. Now they're going to be maybe the 1 seed in the West. So it might be BS for some teams, like, oh, they shouldn't make it. Blah, blah, blah. But if you're one of these teams that's down towards the bottom and you get into the 8 or the 9 or the 10 seed and you somehow make the NBA playoffs, and you get a nice run to see your teams like in playoff basketball, it might change the outlook in the offseason of your team. Say, hey, maybe we be more aggressive here. Maybe we have something that is going to work, and we need to build on this rather than kick the can on it a couple of years. I think it's fine, and I think the Phoenix Suns, the bubble Suns, who were amazing last year, they're the biggest advocate for it. They went from a team that was relatively not thought about to a team that acquired Chris Paul and is going to, be a real factor in the West this year. I love it. More of it, please.
Yeah, Washington could be
exactly
situation. That same situation like Phoenix last year.
It is funny how just in recent years, Chris Paul was looked at as such that albatross of a contract, and who wants him and who's even going to deal for him, and yet. Winning follows the guy, maybe not all the way to a championship, but certainly regular season turnarounds, winning absolutely follows Chris Paul. All the graphics are out there, all the stats, it's something else. So, Sean, before we let you go, these final 7 games here at Orlando on Wednesday, hopefully there's a possibility Kemba's back, hopefully Tatum's out there, ideally Brown, although, and we don't even know the specifics of his injury, what it was that happened when he collided with Tatum, but we know he was already dealing with a sprained right ankle, so they may just play it safe and not play him, even if he is generally speaking okay and would play in a playoff game if that were going on or something like that. But in Orlando Wednesday against the rebuilding Magic, you have at Chicago on Friday, a couple of games with Miami, as you mentioned, both at the Garden, and then the season will wrap up with 3 road games in Cleveland, in Minnesota, and in New York. How many of these 7 do the Celtics need to win to avoid the play-in tournament, you think?
I think they need to win 4, and I think 4 is easy there. 5 and 2 is realistic. Even with the game against the Knicks and the 2 against the Heat, they should be able to go 4 and 3. I think that's enough to get them, especially when you look at some of the other schedules. That's enough to get them out of that 7 seed. I think they could realistically go 5 and 2, though, even with some of the injuries that they're dealing with.
They'll probably go 7-0 and dupe us all into thinking they're championship contenders again. What? Just wait, folks. Just wait. If it happens, you heard it here first. Our thanks to Evan Valenti. I am Adam Kaufman. Subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff for Celtics Beat. We hope you do. And Sean, thanks as always for joining us.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, new show coming again later this week. It'll be a 2-for week after we were a little lazy last week. Thanks for hanging out.